everyone is ready, have a seat, have some pizza. And if it's okay for everyone, we're going to do it in English because we've got some non-Dutch speaking people. So welcome everybody. This is the second Pàu session they were hosting. I'm just going to make it really short. This is the program for tonight. However, it's already it has already changed. It's pizza now. But first we'll do the atomic design presentation with Simon, and after that I'll give the demonstration of Figma and Sketch. So let's start.
Let's start. So first topic, atomic design. I think probably a lot of you know the theory behind it. So atomic design, it's built up from atoms, which are the smallest part. Atoms become molecules, organisms. Then we forget the science and we go to templates and pages. So that's the science behind it. I'm a big fan of it. I've seen a lot of presentations about it, read a lot about it. But what most presentations forget is how do I start with it? So they say the advantages, how you use it, how they use it, how much better it is as a way of working with their colleagues. But they don't tell you how to start with it. So this is more a session about how to start with atomic design. So first of all is how to break down. So for atomic design, you need to do a breakdown of your website, and that can be already very hard to start with. So for this, I made an example that everybody can relate to. So we're starting with a house. So let's say this is a template of a house. You can see it's not really a house because it's a drawing, but it's a template on how a house would look if it would be a building firm. So in this case, we're building houses. So a template of a house has different organisms. In this case, we see a roof, we see the front, right side, back, left side. Now, something you really need to do in your design library, in your atomic design approach, is look, do we have doubles, do we have things that you can reduce? Because less is more in this case. So less organisms is better. In this case, we're a very basic building firm. So we say right side, left side, that's just sides. So we're immediately descoping some things because we say we can minimize our organisms. If we then would look at the organism, the front, we can detect some different molecules. We have a door, we have a window, we of course have the wall of the front. So this is one of the organisms we are breaking down. If we even go deeper, we're going to the door. This door has atoms, so the smallest part of our design library. Here we see the door case, door window, lock, and handle. And then, of course, we have the atom door case. So to recapitulate, we have atoms. If we get them bigger, we go to molecules. Even bigger, the organisms, and then we have the templates. And of course, the pages are really, it's worked out, it's designed, it's live. So we don't really have to think about that if we set up this atomic design pattern. Just to show how you navigate, this is a way. So you go from all those 4 atoms to a door. That door could be part of the organism front and back, not the sides or the roof, because we decided that would make no sense. So in our case, we only provide the door at the front or the back of the house, and the template is a house. If it would be a company that also builds garages, then we would have a second template garage, and maybe a molecule garage door or door. That's something you need to decide. Now, if we would make this more in our world. So this is a website, as everybody knows. And it's the homepage of a certain firm in Holland. So this is the homepage, and you need to look at this website and you need to decide what are the biggest parts of this website. So I made an example. So here I see at the top, it's the menu. So we have a logo, we have a menu, we have some drop down, some other links. Under that, we have a banner, very big banner with some information, some click-throughs. And then we have still other components. All these are the organisms for this page and how this page is built up. So if we would look more into detail into two of those organisms, this is to show you what your thought process needs to be if you want to really decide how you would build up your atomic design library. So here we see a few organisms. In this case, I picked them as organisms because they both have multiple atoms. So they both, they have a title, a description, a date, and in the orange ones, they have an icon and a link. So we see this as organisms because they have multiple atoms. We could reuse somewhere else. We would reuse icons on other types of organisms, or we would use titles in some other places on the screen. But also, so this is on the organism level. We show the molecules here, but we could also have atoms. So these are the light blue ones. It's the news and the project titles. So these are atoms in a molecule. So they skip a step, but, or sorry, title in an organism. They skip a step, they don't form a molecule like the other two do. So just to recap, so this is the organism. And then we see that, so it's on the template homepage, organism highlight view, just give it some name. Usually you discuss that with everybody who uses that, so every stakeholder should agree on the name. The molecule is the information setting section, so that's the title, the description, and the link. And then we have an atom, for example, the title, which in this case is Project Afsluitdijk. And same for this other organism, but it has the same structure. So it's an organism of articles, but it also contains that information section and also that title. Just to show you, you can have different paths, so you can reuse all your molecules inside any organism as long as it has the same design, the same interactions. So now that we know how to break it down, we have our pages, but we of course need to fill them with some content. And this is more the type of content we need to provide on the levels. So on atom level, we usually describe attributes of it. So dimensions, in this case from a door case, we could say materials, available colors, restrictions. Could be that some atoms don't work together with other atoms. Let's say you can't have a door within a garage door. We don't offer that as a company, so they don't work together. You can have that as content here. The restriction is doesn't work together with this or this pattern. So if we look on molecule level, we would mostly describe the interactions. So in this case, position of the handle, lock and handle position relative to each other, and what happens when we lock. So this is just, we describe how the atoms work together to form that molecule. Also, differences. So if we would use it in the front organism, we expect this behavior. If we is a part of the back organism, it will interact in another way. So that's what we describe here. It's important to also, of course, note the differences, because sometimes you would then have a door that on the back of your house, but that doesn't work in the correct way as it should be. The organism level. So here we just show the possible molecules and configurations. So we said that the front can have a door, window, and a wall, maybe something more. But we need to show them what are the possibilities, how can we configure them. And in the case of a house, you get this. So you can have multiple windows, you can have a door in the center or left or the right. We can also document here how far the door needs to be from the side of the house. So this we all describe here, how they work together, how they form the organism. And the template page, that should be, for me, that's one of the shortest pages. So just saying, okay, the possible organisms of this template are these four. For more information, you just link through and then you see, okay, how is the roof built up? How is the front of the house built up? How is the back? How are the sides? So that's content-wise. I have an example of how an atom page would look like. So I will zoom in. So here you see, in this case, we're talking about buttons. So we have primary buttons, explain what they do, where we need to find them. We have the disabled buttons. So here you see already the different states or the different stylings. But we also provide some UX advice underneath them to say, a page can only contain one primary button. Those are the best practices we want to give in our application. Use 2 buttons per page maximum. That can be a rule in your company. So we give that sort of advice. So here we have the disabled buttons, and then of course the sizes of the buttons. We have icon buttons, which are a special case of a button. So that's what we describe here. And an advantage of this documentation is that we also can share it with the people who will code it. So our programmers can also go to here and see first the usability section, the design section, but they can also see how to code it. So just to know what class do we need to use to get a primary button. So for all the different pieces, we can just show how to program it, and this is good to work together so that they also can use it, use this documentation, that they also can give their input, that they can say, look, this is a new pattern and we're going to program it this way, so that on design level it's consistent, but also on programming coding level it's also consistent. So that's the theory behind, or how to break it down, how to present it, what information you need. But you need to decide on what level, because that's the biggest question I receive. How much do we need to document? What do we need to document? How far do we need to go? Do we need to document everything? And it depends on your company or the product you're designing for. So I listed 5 different companies, 5 different projects or products to give you a little insight on how you can decide what level you need. So let's say we have a small company with specific knowledge and experience. For this, I think about like a WordPress or something that's very static, it has some things and you can build on it. So that's the one product where you can still modify some things. So it will mostly follow the same process. Mostly, if you look at a site that's built by WordPress, you can, after a few clicks, you can see that it's WordPress because it follows the same pattern. The menus are built the same. So it follows the same process, but we'll give you some tools to differentiate. Colors, mostly the font you're using. So here I would recommend to use a design system that helps to document this process and also document some common components. So how does a form react? What happens when you click done or save with a form? What happens when you click on a menu? How does it open? What does it do? How does it interact?
Sorry, what do you mean with documenting the process?
Yeah. That's the how do you go from a sort of molecule to another molecule. Could be that you're if you click the info button, what do we do? Do we go to another page? Do we show a pop-up? That's all things you need to describe at the right place. So let's say you have a small company with mostly custom work. Here I'm thinking about advertising companies that usually make websites for events, or like a Rockwerchter, Pukkelpop, stuff like that. So it's a bit higher budget because they expect something really custom, something new. So they don't want the WordPress case where you just copy something from another organization and just show the same with different information. So they may have some common components, but mostly it will be something that they just design, talk over with the customer, and they do something really new. They want to differentiate. So here, there's really no need of a design system. A library could, of just the common components could suffice, just for their coders to have something to be able to easier code. So just to copy paste some things, get a structure on, but then go really broad. We also have, let's say, medium-sized company with a smaller catalog. So they don't have a lot of products in offer, but they always use the same style. This could be maybe a bank, but that's not a medium company, but could be a bank that has different apps, but you always need to see that it's from that bank. So they always use the same styling, they use the same interactions to most of their apps. So it has to be visible that it's the same company. So this will mostly follow the same process and use those same components, because it's also easier to design, easier to code, easier to align when the bank gets a new logo or get some new branding colors. It's easier to adapt. So here, the design system would help to document that. So then you have the process of how do we go from screen A to screen B. How do we, for example, log in? How does it work? It needs to be the same across all the apps. Maybe with some differences. Let's say there's extra security for one app. Okay, you can still document this, but mostly it will follow the same process. And of course, we want to use the common components across the products. Here, because it's easier to design, it's easier to code. The medium-sized company with multiple offerings. So it could be that you're, as a same company, let's say a Barco or something that has a lot of products, a lot of digital products, but their audience is different. So you wouldn't have a customer that uses application A and B together because it's just a total other field. Let's say medical field and the projection, screen projection field, they don't use the same apps. So we can have different styling. So here we have the multiple processes according to what's used in the field, with some unique differences, but still the core process could be the same or should be the same, again, to make it easier for people designing and for the people testing, for the people coding it. So here I would use a design system to document this core process, to also document the common parts, but also really focus on those unique characteristics. So it could be that you say, okay, this part of the application is common, but from this step, for this this field, we're using these guidelines. For that field, we're using those guidelines. And for field C, we're still using some other guidelines. So it could be very different in that case. But if you have some common parts, document these and reuse these. If something changes in those common parts, then it's documented everywhere. Then people from every application will know, okay, that's the process. Let's say, in this case, a large company with multiple offerings, worldwide network. So multiple offerings, a lot of processes, components specific to section of the brand or the company. So in this case, every brand has its own styling. So it could be that one app is very dark, the other app is very light, the other app uses blue colors, but still their process is everywhere the same. They have the same design language across the brand or the company. So here I would suggest then having a design system, but instead of documenting the colors within the atom, it could be a separate guide. So here you would have a design system with the processes for each brand product, which are the same. But next to it, you can say, okay, these are the themes. So if you design for app B, use the theme library of app B. So this makes it easier, so you don't have to have 5 button pages or every if-else structure in your page where you say, where you have to constantly refer to the color. You just have a page with all the themes, and there you can see, okay, the main color for a button is this one. And in the atom, you describe, okay, this primary button uses the main color. And then you can refer and link to the other pages. Also, a tip here is to keep the components to a minimum, because we will have a big library, a lot of processes, but still try to keep them as small as possible. Like in the example, an icon button is a button. It's just something that comes with it, but you don't have to make an atom icon button and an atom button. Just make it button, and the icon button is a special case of that. So those are the 5 examples. So there are some things that a design system will trigger. One of them is a process changes. So you can just say, okay, now we have a design system. You also have to say, now we have a design system, and this is how you will use it. And it will trigger then that you have other responsibilities for you and your team. So somebody will need to follow it up. Somebody will need to be the lead of it. As a designer, you will need to follow it. You will need to say, look, this is the design system. I need to use it like this. You won't be free to design whatever you want. You will have to look at that system. You will have to provide some periodic updates and reviews of the design system. From my own experience, I usually did this when we had a release. Then we did some tests, and we could then see what works, what doesn't work. And then during the next release, we would change the flaws. Let's say some buttons between the primary and secondary button, the contrast is not good. So during the next release, that's something we will work on, something we will change, and then from the next release on, it's according to that rules, and everything gets changed. So that's why it also should be integrated into the process. Let's say if you have workshops, the designing will be limited there, because we will know these are the patterns we can use. We just need to find the correct pattern, see if we can fit all the information in it, and if it works, we can move on. If it doesn't work, maybe we need to update the design system. Maybe we need to change the requirements for the page, because if you want to show too much information, then we need to change that. And And the YouTube recording stopped.
Our tech specialist.
Ja, dit is
Kun je nog eens... Hij staat er nog wel bij. Kijk hoor.
Pizza, anybody?
Kom je nou vorige keer? Nou ja, oké. Fixed it.
Okay, so I'll just continue. So we were at workshops, reviews. This is something that that I think that you need to be very hard on. If you see a review, so it's coded, it's tested, but if you see something not according to the guidelines, it's not done. So it doesn't match the definition of done. So we'll need to fix that in any possible way. Need to change it or do something with it. Also the reviews, of course, of the screen. If another designer presents its solution, see something not according to the guidelines, there needs to be at least a discussion about, do we change the guideline? Do we adapt the screens? Do we adapt the design so that it's according to the guidelines? So yeah, those are the changes. Made to components will need to be implemented retroactively. So that means if you change the color of a button, of course, every button that's already coded, that's already designed, needs to be adapted. Usually, if you work according to this principle, and also coding works with this principle, it will be quick change. If it's a flow change, of course, that will take some more time, but it should be faster once we implemented the atomic design pattern. And also every stakeholder should know how to work with the design system. Every product manager, every product owner, every tester, every coder needs to be able to go through it, find its documents, does need to know how to adapt it. And this is a process that you just, as the lead of the atomic design, you need to sit together with your people and explain, this is how you do it, this is how you use it, these are the rules, this is the structure we're offering. Ask for feedback, change some things, but you need to be able to work with it. And also, every stakeholder should have the ability to make at least suggestions. So when they say we have a requirement, but it doesn't fit the components, doesn't fit what you described here, there need to be some discussion just to still get them into the process so that they know it's working, it's good, we can still have some design input. But these are also the rules that come with it, that once it's decided, it's final. Then, of course, maybe just showing the advantages. That's probably something you already seen in other slides of other presentations, but I still like to give it with you. So it's easier to design because we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We know what we can use. So we are able to focus more on the flow or content-wise, what's on the page, the text we're using, the images we're showing, stuff like that. And also the future. That means you can plan ahead already because you're less busy designing the smaller things. You can look more into the future from, okay, what extra features do we need? What are we lacking on? You can invest the time in interviews with your customers. So use that time that you're gaining into making the product even better. This is something I heard on a podcast, that you don't need to know what the other designer is doing specifically, because you know he's designing this kind of page. You can already say, okay, I know how it will look like, I know how it will interact. If you're doing something similar, you know that you're going to follow the same process, the same way of working. So it should be, once designed, it should look the same, should feel the same. And also there's one source of truth. So there you don't have 15 different documents with versioning, where you have some other design of your button. It's an online document, or it's a document. It's final, it's there. You need to look at that. If you have some other button, it's not correct, because in our atomic design, in our design library, we say that it needs to look like this. Also easier to validate designs. Is it according to the guidelines? Yes or no? It's easy. If it's no, we need to start again. If it's yes, we can just move along. So I've seen that it causes less discussion with your stakeholders about the patterns, because sometimes you would have a lot of discussions about, do we need to place the button there? Do we need to have that text here? Can't we just do this without the icon, something like that? You can just refer to it and say, we agreed upon this, so yes or no. We can do it or we can not do it. Easier to code, of course, once all the coding is in place, once you made your components in that fashion, it's easier to get the page up or looking like it's supposed to be, and you can all focus more on performance, the reusability of components, upgrading, for example, so you can focus on other stuff. And of course, the code should be linked to the design, easier to work together. Also, something important for new hires, if you start somewhere, it's always harder to roll with the whole team to know what to do. If you have this document, this could just be for a designer, for a coder, it could just be a document that say, read this, then you know how we work, what kind of pages we have, what kind of products we have, and what we usually do. And also, it's a big investment, so that part is not the advantage, but in due time, it will help you. It will help you to be time saver for design and stuff. It will free up some time to maybe make some more pages, make some more features, or it will help you to integrate more of a testing, more customer interviews, stuff like that. So in due time, I've seen that it's a big time saver, especially for people like me who don't really like to design, just like to give you all the information. It helps, so it's really a time saver. So that was it. I don't know if there are any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, what about like a lot of the time business has unique ideas for their project or things that don't fit into the existing component?
Yeah.
How do you handle this? Is there a process to guide this, or is there flows?
So the question was if business has some great ideas, but they don't fit into our structure. How do you tackle this? From my experience, I just talked with everybody. I also proposed a process. So in that case, that they come up with a new idea, okay, they need to follow this process. This is just to make sure that they don't do that every time, but also that we I have a mandate to say we won't do it, or we won't do it this release. We can put it on. We do it some other release, or yeah, stuff like that. So just you also design the process around the design system, and just saying, give us the mandate if something like that happens, to either say we can do it now, if it's a good idea, we can do it later, or we won't do it. So that's how I would solve it.
I spoke to some design leads who are afraid that when they start using a design system, that they are afraid that they have to do the work with less people because they have a system, so it should be easier and faster. But they should fire at least 2 people of their team because, well, it's easier and faster.
Yeah.
What would you say to those kind of design leads?
So the question was if a design lead could have the fear that when it's easier to design, they need less people. In that case, we're just we always said when we implement this that then designers can focus. You still need them, but they will need to focus on other stuff. So, like I said, the more on the flow, more on the content. More in user interviews. So as a designer, your role will change, but you will still be able to do stuff. It will just be better.
It is a difference. It sounds like someone who's making user interface design going more towards UX design.
Yes.
So it is for a part a different role. So I can understand that they are.
But then you also have more time to create fancy illustrations
for example,
or effects. That's what I'm actually experiencing at my project. We have this design system. I can spend days on the illustrations that we got and to put them in After Effects. And also this actually also kind of creates an extra job for designers because you need at least one person to maintain the design system. So you're actually getting more jobs or more someone has to switch to the design.
Well, it's indeed a good remark that your job content will change, but we'll still need designers to indeed maybe do some custom icons, custom images. So we can change a lot. We can make it fancier, but indeed you will also need somebody who will keep the system alive and keep it updated, stuff like that. I've also been then the designer that needs to talk with every product manager who has a good idea that you then need to listen to and design something, look if it doesn't fit in patterns you already have, discuss it with them. So your job will change, but I don't think you can say, okay, now we have a design system, so can fire 2, 3, 4 people. But that's something also, if you make this and you make the process, that you need to say, okay, our jobs will change to this, but we still need this amount of people.
Let's say you can convince your lead that you need a design system. What is the minimum amount of hours you would need to set up a good, rock-solid fundament to work with?
So the amount of hours to set something up like this, it's really depends on what you already have. If you have a good application, it could go very quick. But if you have an old-styled application where every button looks different and every button interacts in another way, that means you have to go through every page in the application, document all the different ways, document how you want it to be, document on which pages it needs to change. So that's a lot of work. That's a full-time job for maybe even years. Because then once you have all those patterns, then you still need to discuss what you will use. Then you need to do a proposal, then it needs to get validated, then somebody needs to code it, then you need to check if it's implemented in the right way, so it can take a lot of time. But if you're ready good. In that case, it could be very fast.
Yeah.
And then very fast then is a few months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions?
About the file with the guidelines, where do you store it and what kind of format is it? Is it on a server somewhere where everyone can access it? Or?
I've seen different things. I've seen online platforms like Confluence, where you just document everything. Some people use a sketch file, which I'm not really a big fan of, or Figma. But it depends on what your team has. If your team has Confluence, okay, use that. If your team has another online tool, use that. So I don't think you have to focus on the tool, it just needs to be present. I would advise on something that has an online editor and that's not just a Word file or something, because then people will take copies and blah, blah, blah. That's the one source of truth. It's online. It's on that web page, and you need to check it there. That's the easiest. But in which format you do it or which tool you use doesn't matter, as long as you agree with everyone in your team that that's the way to do it.
And spread it company-wide, like for marketing or other.
What I did when we introduced this system in a company was just invite everybody, but separately. So invite marketing, invite then the architects, then invite the coders, invite product managers, product owners. Just invite them and explain the process, explain everything you're going to do, show them the advantage. So you really need to sell the idea, but once they are with you, you just need to define that, look, if you want something, if they ask a question, how does this page needs to look, just give them the link, say, we discussed this, here's the link, this is how a homepage would look like. So it's also a process of convincing people you need to use it, showing them how to use it, and spreading it.
For instance, you have like 80% of the company here and 20% says like
You indeed always have like some people who are not behind the idea, but then you have to have, I think they call it the champion. You have to have somebody with a lot of influence that says, we're going to use that. So once you've convinced that person, and everybody knows, okay, what he says is right.
And also show the advantages.
Yeah.
The results are really obvious. So if you can just show everyone, they'll get convinced.
It doesn't always work.
A big bag of money to start with something like that. You need a big bag of money to start with something. That's kind of difficult.
I know it saves money as well.
At the end,
in the end.
of course.
You can always start with a MVP kind of design system where you just show, look, like I did for City of Antwerp, just made some examples of this is what it would look like, this is how it would interact. And then, keep selling it, keep trying it to find the right person who stands behind the project, who wants to push it, who wants to fund it, because indeed it will cost money. So somebody has to pay it. Somebody has to pay your time you're spending on it, but just start small, show the advantages. If they are behind it, you can grow a little bigger. Just do it in due time. Don't do it all at once. I've also been busy for 1.5 years just building it up before it was complete. But in the beginning, you're just working on convincing them. Then you make an example, use that example, and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Other questions?
I have one more question. What's your thought about the white label approach? I mean, you can have like one design system and have 2 different brands. I think for the coloring, that's an easy one. But what about if you have different patterns or something like that? How do you manage it?
Yeah.
do you start creating different design system for the exceptions, or how
So indeed, if you have a brand with multiple products, it depends on how different they are and where they will use those applications. Let's say you design something that will be used a lot in the field. So some technician that needs to install some product, you probably have a different design language than somebody using it on his computer behind a desk. So there, depending on how much it changes, and that's, as a designer, you need to have some feeling with it, and you need to say, okay, now we have too much information, we need to split it up. But it all depends on how much does it change your product, and how much information do we show. If you have, you can have 1 or 2 exceptions on a page, but if you're starting to have 3, 4, 5, then maybe indeed you need to split them up. Or if you see, okay, I have 15 atoms that are only used for one product, and they only use those 15, okay, then split it up. That's a clear-cut decision. But sometimes, yeah, it will depend on how much does it change, how different is it.
you mean at that point you create another design system, or you want to keep going?
You maybe just create another entry, like you have a design system for the app A, and then you have a design system for app B. They will follow a lot of the same patterns, but they still, a designer who makes something for app B won't look at the design system of app A. That's just how it will work, and it will be just different entities, maybe even different leads of that project, but yeah, you can split them up. Yeah, that's always the problem. As I said also in the beginning, how much information do we show? How do we split it? The atoms. You will also have discussion: is it a molecule, or is it an atom, or is it an organism? So there you just need to feel, ask some people, make a decision, and just say from now on it's like this. That's the easiest way.
Do you let everybody edit? Like,
everybody can, of course, view it. Everybody can make suggestions, and then it's the responsible of the design system that needs to, of course, look at those suggestions and decide what to do with it.
like for bigger companies, don't you create like a bottleneck situation and you feel like 5 or 6 teams working on a project and they're all coming with suggestions and
yeah, that could be indeed if you have a large company with 16 teams, a lot of suggestions, but then we're creating jobs and then you can have another designer also working in tandem with it. So, but it could be a problem, yes, but that's a bit, you have to see, you have to start it, you have to see how much requests you get, and then maybe you change the process. You say, okay, only when we start a new release, or you say, okay, we need somebody else to help me with all those requests. But it's, yeah, again, it's something you can't predict before you start with it. It's something that you just have to try, see how far you get, start smaller, and then scale up to the whole company.
I think I said that you said in one of the previous slides, at that point you have some review meetings, I think.
Yeah, indeed. So then you have, yeah, but still in the case that you have too much review meetings, then
you have to prioritize.
Yeah, you have to prioritize indeed. That's also a good thing to prioritize, to see, okay, this is a big feature and a big request, we'll tackle it first. And sometimes you have a request like somebody says, I don't like the red that we're using. That's really a small problem that maybe you can delegate to marketing and say, what do you think? Yes, no. You just say no, it's solved. But indeed, yeah, it's prioritize your request. More questions? No.
Which campaign did you do?
I did it for Belfius. Well, I helped them start up the thing. I did it, the whole thing I did for Honeywell. Well, then the Belgian part of Honeywell. And I also tried to sell the city of Antwerp on the idea of using that. I don't know if they ever implemented it, but they got the presentations. Okay, so then I think Juliette will start. Yeah.
Oh, ja, dat is mooi. Ja, laten we tot Juliette heeft.
Ja, zullen we wat toelichten? Want ik ga eerst nog een slide tonen en dan een demo. Maar dat is inderdaad nog met laptop.
Ik ga niet wat hij mij ervan gaat smijten als hij... Ik weet niet wat hij mij ervan gaat smijten.
Oh ja, ja, ik denk dat we... Als jij het scherm overneemt...
Gaat die anders
Sam, wil jij straks nog wat fotootjes maken?
Oh ja, ja.
Ik heb net ook wel foto's gemaakt, maar ik ben minder...
Dat is wel mooi met je.
Maar dat is altijd beter dan wat mij. Waarom is dit zo klein?
Oh, beachbal. Hij is vastgelopen.
Hoe noem je dat?
Beachbal? Heb je dat net gehoord? Beachbal? Is dat een beachbal?
Amai, ben je iets bezig? Ik heb dat
Ja, omdat dat is. Oh ja. En dan. Oh, je bent al. Oh, je zet dat scherm. En jij moet iets doen. Ja, dan. Naar naartoe. Dan ga ik dan moeten overschakelen hier.
Oké.
Oh. Hoi. We staan nu in beeld. Niet meer. Oké, hier ben jij. Tadaa, even kijken. Live gestreamd. En,
Hij zit er altijd bij overleg. Hij zit gewoon overleg. Ja, maar ze hebben authenticatie gezet. En dan abonneer hier en hier. Frontenders zitten bij één. Hij zit naast authenticatie. Ja, dat wel.
Is er een reden waarom niet door? Ik denk dat mensen het warm hadden, maar als het nu koud is, toch wel slecht.
Ja, also, oh shit, oh shit.
Okay, if everyone is ready, I'd like to continue. I've got a.
There's a few missing still.
There's a few missing. Smoking.
Ah.
I'm not taking.
All right.
I'll wait a little bit. I am. Shit. No, I'll wait a little bit. But I don't want to start too late because I think I can talk about Figma for like an hour and keep you up here till it's too late.
We'll just leave at 9.
Yeah, just leave me. As your coach, I do not condone this. Do we have enough chairs, or do we need to get more? Is there some? Yeah. I know who it is. I know who is delaying this.
Nu weet je toch het eerste werkpuntje in je been. Stop maar ook.
Ik zal dit niet veel om aan te werken. Ja, daarom is het nog tijd op. Als iedereen wil, kan je nog zitten. I'll do it in English. So what I'm gonna do is I'll show a few slides, and after that I'll give a demonstration in Figma. And for that part, if you have your laptop with you, if you have an account, it's free. You can look with me in the Figma tool itself to see what we're doing. So but first I'm gonna show a few slides, so you don't need your laptop just yet. So what I want to tell you today is, or I want to make a comparison between Figma and Sketch, but I'm assuming that most of you know how Sketch works, what you can do with Sketch. So I'll focus mostly on Figma, give a demonstration on how to make things in the Figma tool. And I guess everyone who knows me knows already on which side I am on in this competition. So in the end, if you feel the need to, please get involved and defend Sketch. And at the end, we'll see who the winner is. So firstly, I want to quickly show you what I'm gonna cover from Figma. The platform usage, how it is one source of your source of truth, something Simon has already mentioned also with design systems. You can use Figma as the one place where your design system is to communicate this to your stakeholders and colleagues. Figma uses frames versus the artboards that Sketch uses. It has a collaboration feature. I guess this is the main feature of Figma. And you can use it for a design system that is shareable throughout different projects and different files with different team members. The vector tool is a little bit different. It has prototyping, and it has that bridge to development, the coding pedal. It has that in Figma as well. So first of all, what is really nice about Figma is that it's platform independent, because it's actually it's web-based. You can use Figma in the browser. You can also download an application, which of course it's a bit easier, and that way you can also use it offline. But it's mainly meant for online usage because you can keep it in sync. And you can really easily share these designs. So every design you make in Figma, you just get a link when you click on share. Send this to anyone in your company, stakeholders, project managers, developers, and they don't even need an account. They can actually look at them anonymously, like with a just by going to the link, because it's a browser thingy. And but they can also make a free account, and they get a little bit more options, like checking the code panel and the comments and everything. So this is really nice to use in large companies where not everyone has a Mac. Next, I have a few slides to show what the tool looks like. This is your dashboard overview. So what you see here is a list of all your projects. So you can every file that you make, every project that you make, you store it in this one application. This is the application version versus the browser version. I'd recommend getting the application. It's free to download. It's a bit easier to use than the browser version. So all your designs, all your files that you make, you can store here in the app. As you can see, I have a lot of tabs open. I guess everyone who knows me knows that I love tabs. But this also brings me to one, which is a little bit of a disadvantage about Figma. If you open files, if it's large files with lots of design things in them, they take a little while to open. So that's also why I keep my tabs open, so I don't lose that much time when I reopen other files that I'm working on. Also, one other, I'll just start with disadvantages. One other disadvantage that we hear from our developers mostly is that they find it hard to find the files that we're working in. You can kind of solve this here in the center. You see stars. You can actually favorite the files that you're working in, mostly so that they're fixed in your left navigation. And on the right, you can see your team members. This is one of the main features of Figma, is that you can create teams and you can work together with people in the same files. And you can view and manage who is in your team, who has view rights, who has edit rights, admin rights, and everything. So then next is an example of a file itself, or a project even. On the left, you see it's really similar to Sketch. You've got your elements. At the top, you've got your pages. So this is one project with lots of different pages. And below that, you've got your elements that are in that page. I've selected a component. I'll tell you a little bit later about components and how they work in Figma. Here on the right side, you've got, really similar to Sketch as well, you've got your settings for your designs. As you can see, there's this really nice thing, constraints. I think recently this is something that you can do in Sketch as well. I'll explain a bit more about that later as well. Layout grids, something I'll discuss later also. And what you can also see here on the right is that there are 3 tabs. You've got your design, but you also got your prototype and your code. So you don't need external plugins for this. You don't need Zeppelin. You can just look at your code panel right in Figma. So this is really handy if you work together with developers. For example, here I've selected the component, and it shows the constraints of the component, that it has position absolute, that it's fixed at the top. I think it also has options for Android and iOS code, but I don't know if that's like real enough code for developers to use. But it's nice that it's there to give them a bit of a guidance. And here I've got an example of if you've selected a more main thing like a text element, you can see all your font family, font style, font weight, colors, everything. So that's all in Figma. One other thing that is possible in Figma is the commenting feature that I've mentioned. Here at the top left, you see a balloon. If you press that on the right panel, you get an overview of all the comments that have been made. So the designers can make comments, but also the people that you share the file to. So if you share this to your stakeholders, project manager, anyone, they can click inside the screen at the design that they want to place a comment about. And you can see that the gray one with the 21, it corresponds with the comments on the right. So this way it's really easy to collect feedback about your designs in meetings, for example. And let's see if that's my next string. Yeah, also here at the top right, you can see these little balls, avatars actually. You can see who is at the moment looking at the file, who is working in it. And I've made 2 accounts. You can see my arrow. This is a different account that I logged into. So you can see the other people that are looking at your file. You see their cursors, so you can see where they are with their mouse, what they're looking at. Also, if you're working together with your design colleagues, you can see what they are doing. Changes they make are real time. So you just see what they're doing, but also you see where they kind of stay away from, because you don't want to, of course, work at the same file at the same time. And this is something you can do later in the demo. Also, you can look in the same file that I'm working at. If you click on the avatar at the top, you can follow the person that you clicked on. So you follow their screen, what they're seeing. This is also really nice if you're in a meeting, a Skype meeting with the client, stakeholders, whoever needs to give feedback about your designs. They can follow you, they see what you're doing, and you can make changes straight away if they have feedback. If you want to improve something, they'll see it real time. So that's the commenting and the collaboration feature. Figma also has version history. Now this is not exactly as you would hope it would be. Like it's not like Git or abstract, I think, but it's more of a, if you do some things, if you make changes to the designs, or if your colleague makes changes that were actually not good, you can go back in time and bring the whole design back to how it was at an earlier stage. So that is nice that that is possible. So I want to show some of these features in a demo. If you want, if you have an account, you can open your laptop and I can share my design and you can look and see how everything works. But of course, you also see it on the screen. So here, the share button, you can share it with your team members if you have a team, but you can also generate a link. I'm gonna put the link in the channel of sessions.
Can you open it in the app? The link?
You can open it in a browser, but if you have the app, yeah.
You can. It's at files, so it's quite easy to see.
Yeah.
Stupid question.
So if this works, if people can do this, I'll start seeing your avatars.
Juliette, så det elke beperkt met fonds bij Figma?
Sorry?
Is het elke beperkt met fonds bij Figma?
So I'll just repeat the question. The question is if you're restricted with fonts in Figma, but where you can import the fonts like Google fonts and everything. Okay. Yeah, it's the same as its Sketch. Yeah, so I don't think it has any extra limitations.
Okay.
You mean like Adobe fonts? Or...
Yeah, for example, if you don't have a web font.
Yeah, you can just download web fonts and use
but
it.
if you don't. So you share a file and I don't have a font.
Ah, yeah.
Because it's web browser.
It's a good question, actually.
I get a 404 error.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I have to put it on public. Enable link access. Okay, if you drag it I'll try this out in a minute. But it's a good question if it's. I think because at the project, so I'm using Figma at the company that I work at, and we use the font Roboto. So this is not a standard font, I think. So I think, yeah, actually, I think if you use the file, you install it locally, yeah, on your computer. So as you can see now, you can see everyone's cursor. Just one thing, don't change the things that I made. You can only look, but you cannot edit. So, what I want to show first in the demo is the difference between frames and artboards. So in Sketch you use artboards. In Figma they're called frames. And one really nice thing in Figma is that you can nest your artboards. So you can nest frames. And an advantage that this brings is that you can put constraints on your frames. But you have to see, like, for example, this iPhone artboard that I made iPhone frame. This would be a parent frame. If I put another frame in it, I can put constraints to the parent frame. But if I put another frame in that frame, that one can have constraints as well to the.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you. Yeah, no worries. So here's what I'm gonna do. I've made already a frame of the header. I'm gonna put it in here. And as you can see here in the constraints, it has default constraints left, top. Top is good. I want the header always at the top, but I want to have it at both left and right. And I've made a news frame. In this news frame, if I go deeper in it, I've made more frames. I've made a frame that contains the news item, because that way I can put this image at the left of the news item, and the text, I want to scale that, or not even scale, but I want to have it expand to left and right if I resize this. So this has constraints in this frame, and this frame has constraints as well to this frame. So I'm going to move it here. And what it does, I'll show you without editing it in here. If I don't put the constraints to the parent frame and I make it a larger screen, you see that it stays at the position that it was. However, if I put this constraint, this frame with a constraint to the parent of left and right, and I resize this to an iPhone 8 Plus, you see that it resizes. So if you create your components with all these constraints, you don't have to create all the different screen sizes. You can use the one small one and you can enlarge it for all the different sizes. I'll show you an example if we did not use. I'm going to put this one in here as well. This one is built the same way as a frame, and this one, the footer. You can put the footer at the bottom. You see, like it has here the bottom constraint. So if I make this an iPhone 8 Plus, oh, I know what happened. I've put the element of the footer in this, which is not good. So you have to make sure that you nest your frames right. The footer has to be, so this is the parent frame. All the other frames have to be the first child of the parent frame. So the footer is overlapping the graph. Left and right. I have to put this left and right as well. I'm making it an iPhone 8 and everything resizes nicely. And the footer stays at the bottom because I gave it the bottom restraint. And I'll just show an example if I did not do, if I didn't use a frame. What was it? Maybe it's possible with Sketch now too, but Figma was first. But this is something that we'll discuss at the end of the presentation. If they're both able to do it, maybe there's not a winner. Maybe they're both just as good. So I'm just going to show you, like, if you would have a group, it doesn't have these features. So I'm going to put the group. So it's not a frame. And I can put it at left and right as well, but I wasn't able to make the elements inside it to constraints because it's not a frame. So now if I resize this to an iPhone 8, you can see that it doesn't scale nicely. It doesn't resize nicely, it just scales weirdly. So that's the advantage of using frames and nested frames. So the next thing, if it's easier to follow on your screen, you can also click my avatar, and then you see where I'm at with the mouse. So the next thing I want to show you is how you can build a design system with Figma. It's probably pretty similar to Sketch. You can create color styles, text styles, shadow styles, anything. For example, I've made a style from this one already, called it Black 75. If I want to have the Black 100 style as well, normally if it's not a style, you see it here that you still have the hexadecimal color and all the things that you can change. Now I want this to be the design library style as well. Just press this one and call it Black 100 create style, and it's added in your color styles. This is all locally, so it's only accessible in this file. I'll later show it how it's done in the larger shared library. Same with text styles. I've created this one, H4, and here, if you type test, it takes a default. So it starts in the one that I already made. But if I'm gonna add, say for example, this text style as well, H2. Create style, can change this one. So that's really easy. I'm sure most of you know this.
Can you nest text styles?
You mean like group them?
Yeah, like a H2 and then left, center, right?
Yes, it's a little bit different than you would do it in Sketch. I'll show it when I show the example of the larger design system. So these are only local. So for example, if you have the frame that you've created, this, I'm just gonna name it. You just have to right-click your frame, create component, and you'll see also in the left that it will get a symbol that is a master component. This is normally, if you create a design file, you probably make a separate file with all your components. They create a separate file where you've got all these master components in. And then if I make instances, they get a different symbol. They get a large diamond icon. And if I change anything in here, you get overrides as well. If I would change the color. Okay. Yeah, you see here the icons changed. I think it's this one. That it's an override. It's not yet changed. I'll show it later. That example. Just gonna delete this one. It was just a test. So what I'm gonna do later is create a design with my components, but I'll quickly show you how it's done in larger design systems. So say if you make a big design system, so it's like Simon explained. If your company decides to have a design system, you can easily store this in Figma and access it in all your files, in all different projects. There's different ways to use the components in the design system. I'm going to use one for my company. At Nico, we're using a design system. You can either go to the master file, copy paste the components, and if you paste them in your own designs, they'll appear there as instances. But you can also go here to the libraries, and then Nico Master. Might take a while to open. Voila. So this design system is really large. We've got all the text styles, we've got all the colors, icons, and how it is grouped or how it is nested. I'll explain it as well. You can see the titles here. So these are graphics. The page that you created in, the title of the page is your header here. And then in that page, you create frames, and the frames make the groups. So this one, the frame that we've created in graphics, we've called the frame icons control groups. So that way it's grouped in our design system. So no usage of forward slashes or anything. I think it's easy to create, but of course it's not that easy to find all your icons back because it's a really long list. However, you can also use the tab here at the bottom left, components, and there you can search. So for example, here I've got a example of the design that we have at Nico. We have a header. I'm just dragging the header. So this is the out of this project shared design library. This one is actually, you have to have a paid plan of Figma for this. Everything else you can do with a free account, but if you're working with a team, with your colleagues and a shared library, then you have to pay. So of course with larger companies, it's reasonably priced. I'm gonna drag the header in here, and I'm gonna create a player. This is a component that we use for all the players. There's different players in Nico. You've got lightning players, music players, ventilation players, and we use one component for all these different players. You can get an instance of the master component, and then you can override that instance by changing the color. And you can change the placeholder icon in it as well, and that's, maybe I'll show it quickly to the other way. Are we still live streaming? Yeah. I think so. So here, this is the updates. If your colleagues, if your team members do updates in the design library, you get messages from the updates, and you can choose to accept the changes or dismiss them for your file. So you always get a message of that, and then your thing is here. So for example, so all the players have this placeholder. So the only thing I have to do to change the players to the different genres. So for example, what I want to make. I want to make this a star. You use the key shorts Alt and Command. Click the master and drag them here. And then if you see the purple boundary around the placeholder, if I drop it now, it takes the exact alignment and size of the placeholder that was there. So you never need to break open your component to create a different icon in it. You can just replace the one that you have and easily make a different player out of it. I don't know if my explanation is really good, but I hope it's showing it. It's kind of makes it clearer. So these were examples of how you create that. You make the frames, you give the frames a name, and then in your panel you see the titles here. I want to show some resizing examples as well. So what I've done here, we can make that even more advanced by using the components. So I'm gonna create this frame in here and then put it in an iPhone and make larger screens and see how I can use one component, so one input field, for all these different kinds of input fields, also these two, and make the resize behavior match the screen when it's larger. So if you're still following, I'm gonna quickly show how this one is built. So it's like Simon said in his presentation. If you make a good component, or how do you call it, you can use all the different varieties out of that one component. So what I did is I made the input field itself. I put an icon right, but I also put an icon left, and I hid it. So that's gonna be used when we're creating these different input fields. And that one also have a bit of different text, because this text is aligned on the left. But if we place an icon on the left, we also want to get the, here you can see, we want to get the different placage of the text. So I'm just going to make an instance. And I'm going to make another one, so we can keep using the same one. And with this one, I want to create the different ones. So I'm going to hide text default, hide icon right, and show text icon, show icon left. And we're going to make it smaller, let's say 120. And we get an extra one. So this is check-in, this is check-out. We can change the text to pick a date. Easily change the color that I made in a color style. This nice purple gradient. And just change this icon to a baby. Children. We've got 0 children. That is actually true. Adults. 2 adults. And this one I made a component as well. So you can see it's really easy and quick to create a layout if you made the components. So what I'm gonna show now is this is the resize behavior of these. I've showed it a little bit earlier as well. If we put these to left and right in the parent frame, this one left and right, left and right, left and right. These one as well, left and right. Let's see if it works. And we're gonna put the frame inside the iPhone design that I want to make. And I have to put the constraint here as well, because it has a new parent, left and right. Does this have the right ones, left and right? Yeah. So I'm making a larger screen. And you can see everything resizes nicely, except for the frames that are next to each other, because this cannot be solved with the left and right. However, there's a really neat trick for this that I'm going to show you. It's magic. So I'm going to create an extra frame again, put these two in a frame. And inside that frame, I'm going to put the constraints left and right. That's good, I think. And then the frame itself, of course, left and right. And now this frame, I can give an extra feature. I can give it a layout grid. And I'm going to give it 2 columns. So here you can set the columns count 2. You can change the gutter, but it's actually already, it's the right gutter. And it stretches. So what will happen now if I'm creating this larger size? Ta-da! The inputs resized as well. So if you have, for example, if you have grid layouts, you have lots of things next to each other. You can resize this with different larger screens as well. Any questions? One other thing that I quickly wanted to show in this design is, so if you have this master instance, the master component, this is the instance. If I change the color, where's my thingy? If I change the color of the master, of course, all the instances will get the same. So it's really easy to make changes. However, if I decided that this instance gets an override, this one gets dark color, and then I change the master, then your override will stay the same. So you don't have to worry that you'll lose your instances.
And if you update your symbol or your frame?
So I've updated this one. This master, so yeah, I updated. Now this is the master, and this one stays the same. Let's see, that's all that I wanted to show there. One other really nice thing you can do in Figma, I don't know if this is possible in Sketch, is let's say if you made a design with lots of list items, and afterwards you figure, okay, shit, I need to reorder that list. It's not in the right order. So normally you would have to like select all these bottom ones, put them down like 100 pixels, get one at the top of there, then select them again, put them up 80 pixels. So it was a bit of a hassle. However, now, if I select all the frames, all my list items, you see there's these little circles. So I just have to hold and press the circle, and voila, I can switch it. Yeah, I figured you'd like that. One other, it does make your life so much easier because it saves so much time. If you have to do this a lot, it saves so much time. One other thing that I find really handy in Figma is how you change colors. I used Sketch a lot for like large graphic designs as well, and then I would group certain elements that were in a certain color, and all these different elements in that group. Sometimes I wanted to change the color of them, but then I had to select, say I had a group with like 20 items, I had to select each item in that group and then change the color. So you had to select them separately. Now with Figma, if you create a frame or a group, it has a fill color. So if I want the group of these elements, all these elements get the same different color, I don't have to press and select all the different items in this group. I'm at the parent frame and then select a different color, and everything changes with this. This saves a lot of time as well. And if you're still with me, I'm going to show prototyping. So prototyping is possible in Figma. With Sketch, you need to export to InVision. I think recently it has Sketch has prototyping in Sketch as well. They made a release, and they didn't even put sticky headers and sticky footers in the prototype. But I think that they fixed that with a later release. Anyway, so I want to show you what you can do in Figma with prototypes. This is an example of the whole mobile screen that I'm going to show. It's got the news item, it's got like a balance, got another pie chart thingy, and then it's got my credit cards, which is actually a horizontal carousel. So what does Figma have? It has the option to scroll vertically, but also scroll horizontally to your prototypes. It has the option of sticky things. So we've got a sticky header at the top, a footer. We've got the different ways to navigate to other screens. So for example, this, I'm gonna just show it in a bit. This is gonna be an overlay, a bit different than a normal navigation. And this is an example where you have actually a sticky side menu. So everything else scrolls, but you can keep like a menu at the top left of your screen. And I want to show push notifications with delays. So if I turn on prototype, you can see different connections. So what I just mentioned, we're going to start here. This is the one. I put a restriction on the screen to make it a mobile size, the iPhone SE size, but all the content is still there, as you can see. So it's actually larger. This way you guarantee that you've got the vertical scroll. And the same way you have to make your horizontal scroll. So it needs the constraints, or kind of like you can change this. It needs to be small, and Figma needs to know that there's actually more content, and then you can set overflow behavior to horizontal scrolling. So that's what I'm going to show here. And then in your navigation, you can put, instead of navigate, you can put open overlay. And you can put a transition as well. So I've made it move in from right to left. You can see a bit of a preview here. You can actually set the ease in, ease out, for example. And because this is an overlay, instead of just a normal navigation, you can put it on click and action close overlay, and it copies the style that you made from the previous one. So I don't have to put it in here that it has to move out. It just does the opposite of what it did to open when it closes. And instead of closing, you can also select back. I never really used this in large prototypes because it kind of complicates, like where does it go back to? But it can be a nice feature if this is something you want to use. So I would say let's start the prototype. And this as well, it generates a link. You can easily share the link to colleagues, stakeholders. So what have we got? We've got the vertical scroll. We've got the horizontal scroll in here and the overlay. And then it moves out nicely as well. The iPad example, I've made the sidebar sticky. So you can see everything scrolls nicely. Okay, this is maybe not so nice. Where you can fix that, of course. Then the push notification. So as you can see, you can put a delay on it. I'll show it quickly here. What did I do? I've made a separate frame with the notification, and on here I can say open this overlay, and I can put a position manually. So that way it gives a preview of my overlay and where I want to put it. I can say it goes lower, it goes higher, wherever you want it. And say I want to have it move in from the top after this amount of time. And then here I can say after a delay of this amount of time, we close it. So that way you can create this push notification effect. So that is everything with prototyping that I wanted to show you. Just really quickly, I'm not going to go into this too much, but the vector tool is a little bit different than with Sketch. It's they call it a network thing. Like for example, I've made a shape, but I can still expand it. So this is just a bit different than it's with Sketch. And if I give it a fill, and say I'll create a new thingy. Then it also has the Boolean operations. So it's pretty much how you would expect it. That is it for my demo. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation. And I'll quickly just discuss what Sketch has been doing. So the last 1-2 years, it's done some really big updates. Sketch, I think, for a long time it was kind of stagnant. What's the word? It didn't really change that much. It's a good tool. It's perfect. It was perfect for UI designing. And it did not have a lot of competition, I think, so they were pretty safe in the market. However, so the last 2 years, they figured, okay, maybe we need to put some new features in our app as well. So 46 had the browser-based sharing via cloud. So this way you can also give your Sketch designs to your colleagues, stakeholders, clients that don't have Sketch or don't have an account or don't have a Mac. With 49, it introduced prototyping in Sketch. 51 had the big update that you could share your design system. So your symbols. The symbols are the components that I showed in Figma, but Sketch calls them symbols. Before this, it wasn't possible to use your Figmas and use your symbols in different files. But with this update, you can use the design system in different files. And then 52 introduced resizing via constraints as well, Boolean operations, layer styles, and overrides. And I think 53 is the most recent one. It had an update of colors that you can put them in a list view where you can have the hex values. This last one, speed and performance, is also a really big one. I don't know if you remember, but previously, if you used Sketch, if you would drag an artboard, it actually had a delay. So if you dragged your artboard, it would take a few seconds for the artboard to kind of catch up to your mouse. And everyone always says, Figma, it's probably not as fast, it's not as performant, but tests have been better on the side of Figma with the speed of the artboards and the performance, actually. What does Sketch have that Figma does not? Of course, the main... Dark mode.
Yeah.
I've put it in here, yeah. Dark mode is definitely a nice feature. And the many plugins. Figma currently has a plugin for Principle. One for After Effects is in a make. But of course, Sketch has like a really large amount of plugins. Everything that you cannot do with Sketch, you can fix with a plugin. However, in my opinion, this also brings some disadvantages. For example, if you use Sketch in a large company, you make designs. You need admin rights to install plugins. If your company doesn't give you admin rights, you cannot use the plugins. If you share your designs that you created in Sketch, that you use plugins for, and you share it to others who don't have the plugins, they won't see your design in the way that you meant it to be shown, because they don't have the plugins installed. And one issue is also if Sketch does these big updates, most of the time the plugins don't work anymore, and you have to wait for the external company that made the plugins to update the plugins for them to work again. One other thing that I found in Sketch that Figma does not have is the toolbar. You can customize your toolbar here at the top. I rediscovered this actually because I opened Sketch because I was looking for the prototype functions, and I couldn't find the prototype functions in my toolbar. And that was because I made a custom toolbar and I put too much stuff in it, so the prototypes weren't shown. So kind of this is also like it could be a disadvantage as well, because you don't see all the features that it has. If you're creating prototypes in Sketch, you can create an extra hotspot layer. This is like the one that's here in the picture. I thought it was a really nice feature because this way you can create like a pressed area for people to click on that is larger than the icon itself, so it's easier for them to press the buttons in the mobile prototypes. And it has dark mode, and with a recent update, Sketch also has a data generator. I think it always had plugins that you can use Unsplash, all the other things to get like image content, and now it has that built into Sketch. What does Figma have? Sketch does not. It's platform independent. You can use it as one source of truth because it has your most recent files in there. You don't have to work. Like, with a previous project that I had, I used Zeppelin, and my client was always like, but what is the most recent file actually? Because I've been working again in Sketch, but it didn't sync automatically with Zeppelin, so they never knew what the most recent file was if I was too sloppy with updating Zeppelin. So with Figma, you have all your files in sync. The nestable frames is something that Sketch does not have. Collaboration features, commenting, I think it's not possible in Sketch. It's free for basic use, so everything that you saw me doing in the demo, except for the shared library, is free to use. I actually made that with a free account. And it has a code panel, which is a bridge to your developers. It has version history, and I've added this one also. It's really easy to copy images, the artboards that you made in Figma. You just right-click them, copy as PNG. You can do this as well in Sketch, but in Figma you can also copy as SVG, and then it copies the code, but it also copies the SVG. So if you go to another file, you can paste the vector SVG, but you can also use your SVG code in development production. That was it. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I think it's really long. Yeah, I wanted to show you what you can do with Figma because I've been really enjoying using it because it really saves a lot of time. Makes it really nice to work together with your colleagues. But of course, I've always used Sketch before this. Sketch is an awesome tool as well. But yeah, I'll let you decide. Any questions or comments on this? Yeah, we could do a voting if people are not too biased like myself. No.
Does it work in Explorer 11?
Good question. I haven't tried Internet. I haven't opened Internet Explorer, but it would probably not.
Business at in Explorer, so
yeah.
You want to show?
I guess we should. Yeah, we would have to try that. I didn't try this. I don't know. Probably not. Consider Internet Explorer. Any other questions? Do we want to vote?
I have a question. Sorry. Is it also possible to work privately in your document? Yes. Like in the beginning when you're sketching, it's like you don't have a big brother watching you like what you're doing. You know?
Well, this is
brief note.
So maybe I'll just repeat the question for if it wasn't good for the clear for the live stream. So the question is if you can hide your presence when you work in the files, if other people are working in the same files, that they don't see your cursor moving. Yeah. This is actually a comment that has been asked, or a question that's been asked by a lot of people. It's not yet possible, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a feature in one of the coming releases. Because also some people find it annoying to see the cursor moving. Yeah. But like, There is?
Yeah, you have the play button. And
Uh-huh.
there's
So you can already turn it off.
Yeah, I did it because it was annoying.
Voila, it's possible. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm gonna stop the live stream now and finish this presentation.